From the Blind Ability Studios, it's Wellness Wednesday with your hosts, Beth Gustin and Robin Ennis.
Because we all know that misery loves company, and if we're anxious, or they're anxious, we're anxious, they're anxious, it just feeds off each other. In the reverse, if we are with someone who's calm, it'll help us stay calm.
The more that you give yourself a pat on the back, it helps build that self-esteem and that self-confidence in your abilities to conquer future obstacles.
I'm getting anxious and I don't want to panic, so I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to stop. I'm going to listen. I'm going to use all my senses to figure out what's around me, because at least that way it'll start to ground me and I can hopefully begin to figure out where I am versus where I'm needing to be.
Just really adding to that level of preparation can help you in the moment when you most need it. Hey everyone, welcome to Wellness Wednesday. My name is Robin Ennis, a licensed clinical social worker in Colorado, and I'm here with my co-host, Beth Gustin, a licensed professional counselor also in Colorado. And so today we're going to follow up with an email comment that we received from a listener. And again, we appreciate you all reaching out and engaging with us. And so this particular listener commented on the podcast that we had in regards to what to do if you're feeling lost. And so this particular listener had a different take, more so in loss of physical loss. So if you're a cane or a guide dog user, how can you be able to control the anxiety or the panic that starts to increase? And I know I've definitely felt that when I've been dropped off at the wrong place by an Uber, or just in general when I'm walking around with my cane and I get lost. And so how to be able to navigate that while staying calm, because staying calm is very crucial, right? When your anxiety starts to increase, you tend to not think rationally. That's a great question.
I appreciate this question being asked because yes, I think we've all been there. And I think all of our coping skills go out the window when we are first like, oh my gosh, I'm lost. And so I think one of the first things, if we can do it, is to acknowledge I'm getting anxious and I don't want to panic. So I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to stop. I'm going to listen. I'm going to use all my senses to figure out what's around me, because at least that way it'll start to ground me and I can hopefully begin to figure out where I am versus where I'm needing to be. But stop is the biggest thing you can do. And make sure you're safe, like on a sidewalk, not in a parking lot. But stop and listen. And what do you notice?
Yes, that is key. And Beth, I'm glad you mentioned that, stopping on a sidewalk or somewhere where you feel safe. Because I've had a lot of clients bring that up to me like, well, but what if I'm in the middle of the street? Well, nope, don't stop in the middle of the street. Make sure that you are in a safe place to do so. And also to noticing how you react, to anxiety, like we've mentioned in past podcasts. For me, when I get anxious, my heart starts to race or my hands start to shake. So what does anxiety look like for you? And noticing those trigger points before they get full blown, because that can let you know, hey, I need to try and ground or center myself. And when those symptoms start to alleviate, then you can start to go to the plan of action.
For me, the anxiety is more internal. So for me, it's noticing my stomach's doing flip-flops or my breathing is faster. I just have that overall feeling of like, this isn't right. And so being aware, is your anxiety more internal? Is it more physical? Like, what are your symptoms? And then getting in between that gap of I'm experiencing this symptom and it's becoming an anxiety attack. So kind of getting in between those two things, which is why I said stop and breathe. And Robin is with the coping skills. We have to be calm before we can take our next steps, literally.
Yes. And so, Beth, do you want to explain, because you explained really good about the impact of, what happens to our brain when anxiety starts to take over, how the cortex goes offline?
Sure. So in our brains, we have a number of different structures. One of them is the amygdala. And the amygdala is often what's called our emotion brain, or kind of our lizard brain or our animal brain. And it's what gets activated and sounds the alarm signals when we're anxious, and it throws our frontal cortex offline. So we are unable to think clearly. We're just able to feel. We're just able to experience. And so if we can get our amygdala to calm down through deep breathing, through noticing with all your senses what's around you, through narrating, through moving your feet, you don't have to walk, but just like move your feet back and forth, do something to get your brain back in the here and now and grounded and present, then your frontal cortex can come back online and all the different cognitive centers in your brain can start to be more active, and you can think more clearly about the next steps you have to take to figure out, where you are and move forward.
In this moment, I want you to take a minute and think about, can you think of a time where it was hard for somebody to reach you, when your anxiety was so high? Or even thinking about to yourself when you were trying to support somebody and they were in panic mode, what that was like in the moment. And that can be a clear illustration of what Beth is saying about how our thought processes are really offline at that moment. We're not able to think clearly, less known at. And so that's why it really is important. Can't say that enough, right? It really is important to be able to ground yourself and cope, especially if you are feeling like you are physically lost in the moment.
I think one thing about today's society and just where we're at technologically is we have so many more tools at our disposal once we are calm that we can use to help keep that anxiety at bay. Because I don't know about all of you, but I may have my anxiety down to the point where I can start walking, but then I realize I'm not going the right way, or I don't know where I am. I thought I knew, but I didn't. And that anxiety might spike again. And so I think utilizing the technological tools, if you have them with you, can be really helpful at just keeping yourself calm. Whether it's asking Siri where you're at, or using your phone to make a call with Be My Eyes or Ira or FaceTime or something like that. If your phone is charged, these tools can really help us not only get back to where we're supposed to be, but also to stay calm.
Exactly. And so you can talk yourself through that, right? Okay, so I don't know where I am, but I do have these tools, whatever it may be. And Beth mentioned charged, right? So many times, and I've done a training on safety, and I've heard many people say, well, whoops, I didn't have my phone charged, or whatever tool it may be, the battery was low. And so that could be the first thing, right? Before you leave the house, making sure that the phone is on a charger, or making sure that it has enough charge, taking your phone charger with you if you feel like it doesn't. Just really adding to that level of preparation can help you in the moment when you most need it. So yes, those tools can be helpful. Also to listening to your environment. Right. So if you hear footsteps around you or somebody around you, it's okay to ask for help to help you get oriented. Okay, what street am I on? Can you tell me some landmarks? Also, going off of that, when you're asking for help, making sure that you have, in terms of proximity of space, a barrier, right? Still having that level of safety between you and the other person, and making sure that you're keeping yourself physically safe that way too.
And going back a second to preparation, I'm thinking about clients maybe who have diabetes or other health conditions. So making sure that you have snacks or water or, things with you so that you stay hydrated, you keep your sugars up, because if we're anxious, all those different levels of hormones and levels in our body can spike or drop. Or if we didn't plan to be gone this long from the house, making sure you've got with you what you need is also going to help you stay calm and stay healthy as you're trying to navigate to get back where you want to be.
Yes, very true. Yep. In terms of health, making sure that you, again, have that plan of action. That's a really good point, Beth. Going off of that, another way to orient yourself or to try and figure out where you are is mental mapping. Once you have some information, trying to figure out where you may be in that moment. And for some people that may be challenging. So it kind of goes back, adding off of what Beth said. If you know that you have difficulty mental mapping your location, then having a plan to offset that. Okay, so maybe then I need to have somebody in my phone contacts that I can trust, who can be able to really explain on a way that I can understand where I am. And I know this is important because I myself have difficulty mental mapping. And so having that trusted person who's really good describer and really can be patient with you in that moment. Because patience is the key, finding somebody who is patient so that they won't amp you up in that moment too. Because I know for sure not to call my family if I get lost, because I know that they would definitely get amped up out of concern.
I think it's a really good point you bring up, Robin, as far as knowing who to call for what type of situation. And so if you can kind of know ahead of time who's good at describing, who's going to stay calm, who's going to keep me calm. Because we all know that, quote unquote, misery loves company. And if we're anxious, or they're anxious, we're anxious, they're anxious, it just feeds off each other. And so we also know in the reverse that if we are with someone who's calm, it'll help us stay calm. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. Honestly, Beth, when you were talking, the back and forth, right? If they're feeling anxious, then my mood is going to feed into their mood. And it kind of goes back to that looping, right? Kind of what we were talking about in the previous podcast about intrusive thoughts and the safety aspect. And your mind can run rampant. So yeah, just trying to create that stable mood of calmness in that moment. So now you've got your resources and you're lost, but now you know what plan of action you want to take to kind of help you feel more oriented again. That leads you to plan C, right? Okay, so I'm going to utilize these tools and that will help me be able to get back to where I was trying to get back to. And once that happens, then you can take a big sigh of relief, right? And making sure that you give yourself props for being able to navigate that, because getting lost can be intimidating and it can be scary. And I think sometimes we tend to not give ourselves credit where it's due and giving ourselves a pat on the back. And the more that you give yourself a pat on the back, it helps build that self-esteem and that self-confidence in your abilities to conquer future obstacles.
Absolutely. And I hope that this addresses the listener question. I really appreciate you bringing that question to us. And as always, we welcome any questions, any comments, any feedback, because you actually gave us a whole topic on this conversation. So thank you for that. We're always open to topic suggestions and whatever you'd like to hear from us. So don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. And if there's nothing else for this topic, then we are signing off for this episode. I'm looking forward to being back next time. And as always, take care and stay grounded.
Until next time.
You can send Beth and Robin a message at 612-367-6093 or by email at info@blindabilities.com. They'd love to hear from you.
When we share
what we see through
each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the realities
of blind abilities.